Okay, let's set the scene. We're talking early 2017. It was a really intense time, legally, politically.
Oh, definitely. You had a brand new administration getting its sea legs, and every move, especially big executive actions, was instantly under the microscope.
Things were happening fast, decisions being made that, well, really dominated the headlines.
And that's what we're digging into today. Our mission really is to pull out the key insights from that period, focusing on an interview with Congressman Trey Gowdy.
Right, former federal prosecutor, Judiciary Committee member, he had a pretty distinct viewpoint.
Exactly. We're looking at his perspective on a really significant Ninth Circuit Court ruling about travel regulations. We want to unpack his thoughts on, executive power, judicial checks, and importantly, the need for just clear, honest information in government.
And this all comes straight from an audio interview with him, his own words.
That's the source material. So let's start with Gowdy's reaction to that Ninth Circuit decision on the travel order.
Yeah, he didn't really mince words, did he? He basically said anyone familiar with the Ninth Circuit is not surprised by how they rule.
Not surprised at all. But interestingly, he immediately pivots to suggesting what he called an easy remedy, something he thought could actually build consensus across the entire country.
And that remedy hinged entirely on looking at people in different categories, right?
Precisely. He breaks it down into essentially three groups. First, you've got U.S. citizens.
Okay.
For them, Gowdy was crystal clear. They get the full panoply of constitutional rights and due process, no question.
It's a package.
The whole deal. Then, on the complete other side, you have foreigners who've never even been to the U.S.
Right.
His example was someone from, say, Yemen who just wants to visit.
Mm.
He argued that group is not entitled to any due process or constitutional protections when it comes to just getting permission to enter.
Okay, so those are the two clear ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But then there's the middle.
Ah, yes, the middle group. And this is where it gets, well, complex. These are people who have a visa.
They've already got some legal standing, presumably.
Exactly. And crucially, as Gowdy put it, they've relied upon that visa. Maybe they rent an apartment or put your kids in school based on having it.
So they've acted on it, made life decisions.
Right. And because of that reliance, Gowdy says they do have certain property interests. And that means they are entitled to due process.
Okay, that distinction is key. So how did he think this applied to fixing the executive order itself?
Well, his argument was that the order could have been pretty easily remedied, the fix, applying a different evidentiary basis depending on the category at bar.
Evidentiary basis. Meaning,
Oh.
like, the level of proof the government needs.
Exactly. What justification does the government need to show a court for treating each group differently? He thought if they tailored that, they might have been able to avoid the whole thing escalating, perhaps without going to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And understanding these different levels of rights, well, it's pretty important for you, the listener, to really grasp why these legal challenges get so complicated, isn't it?
Absolutely. It shows how broad policies often need really fine-tuned application.
Okay, so moving on slightly. There was also a lot of talk about the drafting of that first executive order. The source material notes it, quote, was written by basically outside counsel and not run by the DOJ.
Right. Not through the usual Justice Department channels, apparently. And Gowdy seemed to agree there were issues, saying it had a number of holes in it.
Which kind of leads to this point about a new president finding their footing.
Yeah, Gowdy actually seemed pretty understanding about that part. He acknowledged, very few people ever raised their hand and volunteered to be the leader of the free world. It's just a hard job.
He used that sports analogy, didn't he?
He did. Tom Brady wasn't a very good quarterback his first year. Neither was Peyton Manning. His point was he was prepared to give this president time to learn the ropes.
And this is a big but, right? He didn't let the advisors off the hook.
Not at all. His core message was really directed at them. He said, it's incumbent upon his advisors, including his legal advisors, to give the president the right legal analysis.
For those different categories we talked about, visa holders, citizens, non-citizens.
Exactly. And, crucially, they needed to provide the evidentiary basis. There's that phrase again, the proof needed to withstand court scrutiny.
So it wasn't just about giving the president time. It was about the team providing the right support. And maybe better communication overall about that the order was really trying to do.
That seems implied, yeah. Clearer communication about the goals and the legal grounding for those actions.
Okay, so this tension between the executive action and the courts. Gowdy really zeroed in on one part of the Ninth Circuit's opinion, didn't he? He called it the most troubling part.
He did. It was their reliance on a specific prior case called Zavados.
Zavados, okay.
Gowdy was pretty blunt. He said if people were familiar with the facts of Zavados, they would be outraged that the court used it in this context. He felt it was a serious misapplication of precedent.
And this gets to that fundamental clash, right? Unelected judges reviewing decisions made by an elected president, the commander-in-chief.
That's exactly the friction point he highlighted. He stated very clearly, judges are not elected. The commander-in-chief is.
And his argument was?
He strongly believed you don't want federal judges overlooking battle plans or decisions to strike certain targets or decisions related to war or national security. Those are executive functions, in his view.
But he did add a caveat, didn't he? It wasn't absolute power.
Right. He was careful to add nuance. He said it's not a blank check for the president. There are limits.
Okay.
But he countered, it's also true that you certainly don't have to clear everything with an Article 3 unelected federal judge.
And just to clarify for listeners, Article 3 unelected federal judge refers to judges appointed for life under the Constitution, not elected officials.
Correct. And this whole dynamic, this push and pull between the courts wanting oversight and the executive needing authority, especially in national security, well, it's constantly playing out. Understanding that tension is really key for you to see how our government actually works day to day.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift slightly, but stick with this theme of advice and information. The resignation of Michael Flynn came up.
Yes. And Gowdy's point here was about the fundamental need for truthful advice at the highest levels.
He said the president, the vice president, they have the right to rely on advisors that provide them the unadulterated, complete, whole truth.
Unadulterated, complete, whole truth. He felt anything less was unfair to the president and the vice president.
It's a pretty absolute standard he's setting there.
It is. And while Gowdy mentioned he'd never actually met General Flynn and respected his military service, his rule was unwavering. You have to tell the truth to your boss all the time.
Period.
Period. It really highlights how critical trust and just, well, factual information are right at the very top. It's the foundation, really, for any effective leadership, especially when security is involved.
And tied into this Flynn situation was the issue of leaks, specifically the transcript of Flynn's call. Gowdy seemed genuinely surprised it got out.
Yeah, he expressed surprise and noted the speculation swirling around at the time that maybe former Obama officials may have leaked this information.
And he brought up his own experience, didn't he? Trying to get certain transcripts.
He did. He made a personal connection, mentioning his own committee's work related to Benghazi, saying he'd tried to get certain transcripts for years and never got them. It seemed to highlight a perceived inconsistency for him.
Which then led him to some pretty pointed criticism of some congressional colleagues.
Yes, he didn't hold back there. He suggested that, in his view, some of his Democrat colleagues had amnesia regarding oversight.
His argument being
that, according to him, for 8 years they didn't lift a finger to do oversight, and the energy they were showing then was because they'd been on, in his words, an 8-year-long vacation from doing oversight.
Okay, so that was his stated view on the political dynamics of oversight at the time.
Right. But regardless of the politics, his core call to action was about the leak itself. He urged the committees of jurisdiction, the ones responsible for these areas, to investigate how classified information can make its way into the public domain.
And he stressed this wasn't partisan.
Exactly. He emphasized this is not a Republican issue, it's not a Democrat issue, it's a legal issue.
And that really is the crucial point for everyone, isn't it? Leaking classified information, no matter who does it or why, has huge potential consequences for national security, for public trust. It just erodes things.
Definitely erodes trust and can have real-world security impacts. So, well, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, we've really walked through Trey Gowdy's perspective on navigating executive power, the role of the courts, and this absolute necessity for integrity. Integrity in information, integrity in conduct.
Yeah, covering a lot of ground there, from the Ninth Circuit decision to advising the president to the Flynn situation and leaks.
It all ties together around those core themes.
So maybe the final thought to leave you, the listener, with is this. Considering all these complexities, Gowdy highlighted defining legal rights for different groups, how much leaders rely on their advisors, this constant fight against leaks. What does this ongoing tension really tell us about executive authority and accountability today, especially in our crazy fast information world?
And maybe what's our responsibility as citizens trying to stay informed to actually sift through the noise and discern that unadulterated truth Gowdy talked about?
Something definitely worth thinking about.